While everyone is talking about the Tinubu-Atiku-Obi triangle as the defining story of Nigeria's 2027 election, nobody is asking what happens to everything when the North fractures. For 65 years of Nigerian independence, one assumption has held the political architecture of this country together more than any other: that the Hausa and the Fulani are one political bloc, that the North speaks with one voice, that whoever controls the Hausa-Fulani coalition controls the Nigerian presidency. That assumption is now being publicly challenged from inside the North itself. A movement is emerging, documented, organized, vocal, and growing of Hausa political actors who are explicitly separating their political identity from Fulani leadership, who are arguing that the Hausa majority within the North has been politically subordinated to a Fulani elite minority for decades, and who are declaring their intention to reclaim control of northern political structures before 2027. If this movement is real, and the evidence suggests it is more real than most southern commentators have registered, it does not simply change the North. It changes the entire calculus of Nigerian presidential politics. Every coalition formula for 2027, every assumption about what the Northern Bloc delivers, every calculation Tinubu, Atiku, and Obi are making right now. The Hausa-Fulani distinction, what most southern Nigerians have never been told. To understand this movement, you first need to understand something that southern Nigerian political commentary almost never addresses with precision. The Hausa and the Fulani are two distinct ethnic groups who have been politically fused into a single label for reasons that serve specific political interests. The Hausa are West Africa's largest indigenous ethnic groups, with populations concentrated primarily across Kano, Katsina, Kaduna, Sokoto, Kebbi, Jigawa, and Zamfara states. They have deep pre-colonial civilizational roots, established city-states, agricultural traditions, and a cultural identity distinct from the pastoral Fulani. The Fulani are a predominantly pastoral people whose political ascendancy in northern Nigeria traces directly to the jihad of Usman Dan Fodio in 1804, which overthrew the Hausa city-state rulers and established the Sokoto Caliphate, a Fulani-led theocratic empire whose successor structures, including the emirate system, have shaped northern political authority ever since. The Sokoto Caliphate was the largest state in Africa in the 19th century. Its political descendants, the emirate councils, the traditional rulers aligned with the caliphate's legacy, the Fulani political families whose names appear repeatedly in northern governance, have exercised disproportionate influence over northern Nigerian political structures relative to their population. The Hausa-Fulani label has obscured this distinction in southern Nigerian political commentary and deliberately in northern political discourse for decades. The trigger: what has changed? Three converging developments have made the Hausa-Fulani political separation an explicitly stated political agenda rather than a background tension in 2025 and 2026. First, the security crisis. The escalation of banditry and kidnapping across the northwest, primarily in Zamfara, Katsina, Kebbi, and parts of Sokoto and Kano, has been accompanied by a growing public narrative that Fulani herders and, by association, Fulani political elites are either complicit in or insufficiently committed to suppressing the violence. This narrative is contested, but it is widespread. It is being expressed publicly in northern communities, and it is generating political resentment that is ethnically coded. Second, the Buhari presidency's legacy. Muhammadu Buhari, a Fulani Muslim from Katsina, served 2 terms as president from 2015 to 2023. During those 8 years, the perception among significant segments of the Hausa population that Buhari's government disproportionately favored Fulani interests in appointments, in responses to herder-farmer conflicts, in security deployments, hardened into an organized political grievance that is structurally ethnic. Third, the 2027 electoral opening. With a Yoruba president in Aso Rock for the first time since Obasanjo, and with the northern presidential slot visibly open for 2027, Hausa actors are asking explicitly for the first time at this scale why that slot should automatically return to Fulani leadership rather than reflect the Hausa numerical majority within the north. The institutional structures through which Fulani political authority has been maintained within the northern Nigeria, the emirate system, the Sokoto Caliphate's successor networks, the party delegate mechanisms, are more fragile than they appear from the outside the north. We will return to exactly where those fractures are widest. There is a documented history of Hausa political actors attempting to separate from Fulani leadership within the north and being absorbed, marginalized, or co-opted back into the Hausa-Fulani coalition before they could build sufficient independent momentum. We will examine whether 2026 is structurally different from those previous attempts. The architecture of Fulani political authority within the north. To understand what the Hausa movement is challenging, you need to understand the three institutional pillars through which Fulani political authority has been sustained within the northern political system. Pillar 1. The Emirate System. Nigeria's Emirate councils, traditional rulers operating under the authority of the Sokoto Caliphate's successor structures, are predominantly Fulani in their leadership at the Emirate level. The Emir of Kano, historically, has been drawn from the Fulani royal families installed after the 1804 jihad. The sultans of Sokoto are Fulani. The Lamido of Adamawa is Fulani. These traditional rulers are not merely ceremonial. They are active political actors who mobilize voters, signal to communities, and mediate between federal political structures and grassroots northern populations. Pillar 2. The major party delegate structures. Nigeria's major parties, the APC and the PDP, elect their presidential candidates through delegate primaries. Those delegates are drawn from state and local government party structures. In the north, the process by which those delegates are selected has historically been influenced by traditional ruler networks and by the political families whose roots trace to the emirate system. Controlling the emirate endorsement has frequently meant controlling the delegate pool. Pillar 3. The Sokoto Caliphate's network. The Sultan of Sokoto is not merely the head of the Sokoto Sultanate. He is the recognized spiritual and political leader of Nigerian Muslims in the most institutionally significant sense within northern Nigeria. His endorsement, explicit or implied, has shaped presidential primary outcomes, state gubernatorial races, and federal appointment patterns. This network operates quietly, but it operates with structural consequence. Where the fractures are widest. The Hausa movement's challenge to these three pillars is most acute in three states: Kano, Katsina, and Zamfara. Kano is the most politically significant. The dethronement of Emir Muhammad Sanusi II by Governor Abdullahi Ganduje in 2020, a Hausa governor removing a Fulani emir seen as politically inconvenient, was the most visible single act of institutional challenge to Fulani traditional authority in modern Nigerian democratic history. Sanusi was subsequently reinstated by a successor government, but the act itself demonstrated that the Emirate's political authority is not immune to democratically elected government challenge. Kano's current political dynamics under Governor Abba Kabir Yusuf of the NNPP, Kwankwaso's platform, continue to reflect a political class that does not defer to the Emirates' guidance in the way previous administrations did. In Zamfara and Katsina, the security crisis has produced local political voices explicitly arguing that Fulani political leadership has prioritized Fulani herder interests over Hausa farming community security. These voices have electoral expression. The most powerful man in northern politics may not be Fulani, and that changes everything. Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, founder of the Kwankwasiya movement, former governor of Kano, former federal minister, and the 2023 NNPP presidential candidate, who delivered 1.5 million votes, primarily from Kano and surrounding states, is Hausa, not Fulani. His political movement is the most explicitly Hausa-identified mass political organization in Nigeria since the First Republic. Kwankwasiya is not simply a political party, it is a cultural identity movement with its own iconography, its own dress code, the red cap, and its own generational political loyalty that operates independently of both the APC and the PDP's northern structures. If the Hausa movement that is declaring independence from Fulani political leadership has a functional organizational anchor, Kwankwasiya is the closest thing to it that currently exists. Institutional significance. The three pillars of Fulani political authority within the north, the emirate system, the party delegate structures, and the Sokoto network are all under pressure simultaneously for the first time in Nigerian democratic history. The question is not whether the pressure is real, it is whether it is sufficient to produce structural change before 2027. Now let us go to the political strategy layer, because the question of who benefits from a Hausa-Fulani split within the north is the question that determines the entire 2027 election. Who benefits from a Hausa-Fulani political split? Let us be precise about the electoral mathematics before we name the beneficiaries. The Northwest, comprising Sokoto, Kebbi, Zamfara, Katsina, Kano, Jigawa, and Kaduna, is Nigeria's most electorally significant region by registered voters. In 2023, the Northwest alone delivered more total votes than any other geopolitical zone. Whoever consolidates the Northwest wins the national popular vote in almost every modeled scenario. The Hausa are numerically dominant in 6 of those 7 states. If the Hausa movement successfully separates its electoral behavior from Fulani political direction and delivers those votes to a candidate aligned with Hausa political identity rather than the Fulani establishment's preferred option, the effect on the APC's northern coalition is devastating. The APC's northern political machinery has been built, sustained, and delivered through the same emirate networks and Sokoto Caliphate adjacent structures that the Hausa movement is challenging. A Northwest that votes by Hausa political identity rather than emirate-guided APC loyalty is a Northwest that Tinubu cannot take for granted in his 2027 re-election calculation. Tinubu's exposed flank. Bola Tinubu's 2023 victory was constructed on a specific northern coalition. The Northwest delivered significant APC votes, the Northeast held, the North Central was competitive. His southern base in the Southwest anchored the coalition with the largest regional vote share. That architecture depends on the Northwest's continued APC alignment, a Hausa political movement that decides explicitly as a matter of identity-based political assertion that it will not deliver its votes through APC structures controlled by Fulani political networks introduces a variable into Tinubu's 2027 calculation that no amount of federal patronage distribution, ministerial appointment, or infrastructure announcement can easily neutralize. You cannot outspend an identity movement with project announcements. Atiku's complicated position. Atiku Abubakar is Fulani. That fact, which has been largely invisible in southern Nigerian political commentary about his electoral performance, is not invisible in the north. In 2023, Atiku performed relatively poorly in the Northwest, the region where Hausa identity politics is most organized, compared to his performance in his Northeast Fulani home base. A strengthened Hausa movement that explicitly frames Fulani political leadership as an elite capture problem does not help Atiku build the northern coalition he needs for 2027. It actively narrows the geographic base from which he can draw competitive vote shares in the most electorally significant zone in the country. Kwankwaso and the opportunity window. Rabiu Kwankwaso is the single political actor most positioned to benefit from a genuine Hausa political awakening. His Kwankwasiya movement already commands deep loyalty in Kano. His 2023 performance, 1.5 million votes from a third-party platform with no federal patronage machine, demonstrated the movement's organic mobilization capacity. The question for 2027 is whether Kwankwaso remains on a third-party platform where his ceiling is determined by the Labour Party's 2023 president of high enthusiasm but insufficient constitutional spread, or whether he negotiates his movement's weight into a major coalition in exchange for a vice presidential slot or a cabinet commitment that delivers Hausa political recognition at the federal level. The Peter Obi dimension. A fractured northern bloc is the single development most favorable to Peter Obi's 2027 presidential mathematics. The constitutional requirement is 25% in 24 states. Obi's 2023 weakness was in the north, precisely because an organized APC-directed Hausa Fulani coalition delivered those states to Tinubu with minimal competitive pressure. A northwest, where Hausa identity politics fragments the APC's vote share, is a northwest where Obi's threshold of 25% becomes achievable in states that were completely foreclosed to him in 2023. He does not need to win the northwest. He needs to reach 25% in enough of its states to satisfy the constitutional threshold. Northern fragmentation is the mechanism that makes that possible. The Fulani elite's counter-strategy is already underway, and it is sophisticated. The assumption that Fulani political leadership will simply absorb this challenge and decline is not supported by the historical record. The Sokoto Caliphate's political successors have navigated democratic Nigeria since 1999 with considerable sophistication. Their counter-strategy in response to the Hausa movement will likely involve three moves: co-opting prominent Hausa voices into federal appointments that neutralize their independence, deploying the Sultan of Sokoto's moral authority to reframe the Hausa-Fulani split as a threat to northern Muslim unity, and using the security crisis in the northwest as evidence that intra-northern division empowers bandits and external threats. Each of these moves has been used before. Each has worked before. Whether they work in 2026 against an organized Hausa movement with Kwankwaso as its organizational anchor is the genuinely open question. Now, if what I just told you surprises you, drop a comment below. I want to know what you think before we get to the part that changes everything. We have mapped the political arithmetic. Now let us examine what a genuine Hausa Fulani political split means for Nigeria as a whole, not just for the election. What a Hausa Fulani political coalition does to Nigerian national cohesion. The Hausa Fulani political coalition has been, since Nigeria's independence, one of the primary stabilizing fictions of Nigerian national politics. It is a fiction, not in the sense that it is false. The coalition has delivered real electoral outcomes, but in the sense that it papers over a genuine internal ethnic hierarchy that has consequences for governance, for resource distribution, and for the political representation of the Hausa majority within their own region. A public fracture of that coalition removes the fiction, and when the fiction is removed, the underlying tensions that it has suppressed between Hausa farmers and Fulani herders, between emiratal-aligned political families and democratic elected governors, between the Sokoto Caliphate's successor authority and the constitutional authority of elected state governments become explicit political conflicts rather than managed internal tensions. The security implications. The most dangerous near-term consequence of a Hausa Fulani political split is its interaction with the existing security crisis in the northwest. Banditry, kidnapping, and farmer-herder conflicts in Zamfara, Katsina, Kebbi, and Kano have already produced a political environment in which ethnic attribution of violence is widespread. A Hausa political movement that explicitly frames Fulani elites as complicit in or indifferent to that violence introduces a narrative framework that has the potential to accelerate ethnic polarization within the region. The Nigerian security architecture, already stretched across multiple simultaneous crisis fronts, including the Northeast insurgency, the Southeast security operations, and the Northwest banditry, does not have the operational capacity to manage an escalation of intra-northern ethnic conflict on top of existing pressures. The political temperature that the Hausa movement is raising has security consequences that its leaders may not fully be accounting for. The federal character implications. Nigeria's federal character principle requires broad ethnic and regional representation in federal appointments. It has always applied within a framework that treated the North as a relatively unified bloc and allocated northern slots accordingly. If the Hausa and Fulani become politically distinct categories with separate political actors asserting separate representation claims, the federal character calculus for appointments, for agency headships, for security service leadership becomes significantly more complex. This complexity is not hypothetical. It is already being argued in northern state capitals. Hausa politicians are asking with increasing explicitness why the positions allocated to the north in federal appointments are so frequently occupied by Fulani individuals relative to the Hausa population that they are supposed to represent. National Stability Assessment. A genuine political separation of Hausa and Fulani political identities within the north would be the most significant restructuring of Nigeria's ethnic political architecture since the end of the Civil War. Its stability implications are not fully predictable. Its electoral implications are seismic, and its timeline is measured in months, not years. Now, let us examine the international dimension, because what happens in the Nigerian North does not stay in the Nigerian North. Why the world is watching the Nigerian North. The international community's interest in the Hausa-Fulani political question is not primarily about Nigerian electoral politics. It is about regional security architecture. Nigeria's northern region shares borders with Niger, Chad, and Cameroon, three countries that have experienced military coups since 2021 and whose political stability is deteriorating. The Fulani people are a pan-Sahelian ethnic group with populations across 12 West African countries. Political developments that destabilize the Fulani political establishment's position within northern Nigeria have implications for Fulani community relations across the Sahel region that extend far beyond Nigeria's internal politics. The United States Africa Command, AFRICOM, and the French military's successor engagement frameworks in the Sahel are tracking the intersection of ethnic political mobilization and security dynamics in northern Nigeria with a level of analytical attention that has increased significantly since the 2023 coups. What happens in Kano and Sokoto does not stay in Kano and Sokoto. The ECOWAS dimension. Nigeria is ECOWAS's anchor state. Its political stability is the foundational assumption on which ECOWAS's institutional authority rests. An intra-northern ethnic political rupture that produces electoral uncertainty in 2027, or in a worst-case scenario, post-electoral violence in the northwest, would undermine Nigeria's capacity to exercise the regional leadership role that ECOWAS requires of it at precisely the moment when the organization is most under pressure from the Sahel's coup governments. What the diaspora must understand. For Nigerians in the United Kingdom, United States, and Canada who are watching this development, the Hausa-Fulani split is not a distant internal squabble that does not affect you. It is a direct variable in the political risk assessment that determines the value of your naira remittances, the security of your family members in the northwest, and the credibility of the Nigerian government's ability to maintain the kind of democratic stability that keeps Nigeria on the right side of international partner relationships. The diaspora's political engagement, its financial contributions, its advocacy, its social media amplification of northern political voices can either escalate this split or help contextualize it within a constructive political framework. The choice matters, and it is available to you. National Stability Assessment. A genuine political separation of Hausa and Fulani political identities within the north would be the most significant restructuring of Nigeria's ethnic political architecture since the end of the Civil War. Its stability implications are not fully predictable. Its electoral implications are seismic. and its timeline is measured in months, not years. Now, let us examine the international dimension, because what happens in the Nigerian north does not stay in the Nigerian north. Why the world is watching the Nigerian north? The international community's interest in the Hausa Fulani political question is not primarily about Nigerian electoral politics. It is about regional security architecture. Nigeria's northern region shares borders with Niger, Chad, and Cameroon, three countries that have experienced military coups since 2021 and whose political stability is deteriorating. The Fulani people are a pan-Sahelian ethnic group with populations across 12 West African countries. Political developments that destabilize the Fulani political establishment's position within northern Nigeria have implications for Fulani community relations across the Sahel region that extend far beyond Nigeria's internal politics. The United States Africa Command, AFRICOM, and the French military's successor engagement frameworks in the Sahel are tracking the intersection of ethnic political mobilization and security dynamics in northern Nigeria with a level of analytical attention that has increased significantly since the 2023 coups. What happens in Kano and Sokoto does not stay in Kano and Sokoto. The ECOWAS dimension. Nigeria is ECOWAS's anchor state. Its political stability is the foundational assumption on which ECOWAS's institutional authority rests. An intra-northern ethnic political rupture that produces electoral uncertainty in 2027, or in a worst-case scenario, post-electoral violence in the northwest, would undermine Nigeria's capacity to exercise the regional leadership role that ECOWAS requires of it at precisely the moment when the organization is most under pressure from the Sahel's coup governments. States and Canada who are watching this development, the Hausa Fulani split is not a distant internal squabble that does not affect you. It is a direct variable in the political risk assessment that determines the value of your naira remittances, the security of your family members in the northwest, and the credibility of the Nigerian government's ability to maintain the kind of democratic stability that keeps Nigeria on the right side of international partner relationships. The diaspora's political engagement, its financial contributions, its advocacy, its social media amplification of northern political voices can either escalate this split or help contextualize it within a constructive political framework. The choice matters, and it is available to you. The strongest argument against the significance of this movement. The most serious challenge to the analysis presented in this video comes from northern political scholars and practitioners who argue the following. Hausa Fulani political tensions are not new. They have existed in various forms throughout Nigerian democratic history. They have always been managed, absorbed, and ultimately subordinated to the larger logic of northern political unity when presidential elections approach. The 2026 version of this tension will resolve the same way the previous versions did. That argument carries historical weight. It is not wrong about the pattern. What it may be wrong about is the structural context in which the 2026 version is emerging. Previous Hausa assertion moments lacked three things that the current moment has: a functioning mass political organization in Kwankwasia, a security crisis that has given the Hausa Fulani tension a visceral daily dimension in the lives of Northwest communities, and an electoral calendar in which the stakes of northern unity versus northern fragmentation are maximally consequential for the 2027 presidential outcome. Those three conditions together represent a structural context that is genuinely different from previous cycles. The misconception that this is a southern manufactured narrative. A significant portion of northern political commentary, aligned with the APC's northern machine, is framing the Hausa movement story as a narrative manufactured and amplified by southern political actors seeking to divide the north for electoral advantage. That framing is self-serving and partially inaccurate. The Hausa movement's public declarations have come from northern voices. Its organizational anchors, Kwankwasia, state-level Hausa cultural and political groups, and northern civil society organizations are northern in origin and northern in leadership. What southern political actors are doing is amplifying a narrative that exists independently of them. The amplification is opportunistic. The underlying movement is not manufactured. The Hausa movement's greatest threat is not the Fulani establishment, it is itself. Every previous attempt at Hausa political independence within the north has ultimately failed not because of Fulani elite suppression alone, but because Hausa political actors have been unable to maintain unity long enough to deliver a consolidated political outcome. Individual ambition, state-level factional rivalries, and the short-term incentives of federal patronage have consistently pulled Hausa politicians back into alignment with whichever national party is dispensing appointments and contracts. The Kwankwasia movement is the most disciplined Hausa political organization in Nigerian democratic history. It has survived longer than its predecessors. Whether it survives the specific pressure of the 2027 primary season, when the incentives for individual defection will be at their maximum, is the central organizational test that determines whether this moment becomes a historical footnote or a structural turning point. Most likely next moves by each major actor. Kwankwaso and the Hausa movement's most probable next move is a structured demand delivered through public statements, through party negotiations, and through voter mobilization signals for the North's 2027 presidential slot to be drawn from Hausa political leadership rather than Fulani. Whether that demand is framed as a specific candidacy push for Kwankwaso himself or a broader Hausa turn argument that could support multiple candidates will become clear in the next 6 months. The Fulani political establishment's most probable counter-move is the co-optation strategy, identifying the most prominent Hausa voices within the movement and offering them federal positions, party leadership roles, or gubernatorial support commitments that make individual accommodation more attractive than collective assertion. This has worked before. Watch which Hausa voices go quiet after receiving federal appointments. Tinubu's most probable response is a patronage offensive in the northwest, accelerated infrastructure announcements, ministerial reshuffles that increase Hausa representation in the federal cabinet, and direct engagement with Kwankwaso's political organization, either to neutralize it through inclusion or to isolate it through marginalization. The choice between those two approaches will signal whether Tinubu assesses the Hausa movement as a genuine threat that must be incorporated or a manageable disruption that can be outlasted. Atiku's most probable move is an attempt to position himself as a Fulani leader who is genuinely responsive to Hausa political grievances, a difficult rhetorical position to occupy credibly given his personal and political identity, but the only available option for a man whose northern coalition depends on Hausa votes he cannot afford to lose. The fractures in Fulani institutional authority. We said we would return to where the fractures in Fulani institutional authority are widest. The answer, in Kano, where the Sanusi dethronement demonstrated that elected governors can challenge emirate authority. In Zamfara and Katsina, where the security crisis has politically contaminated Fulani traditional authorities' legitimacy, and in the party delegate structures, where the NNPP's 2023 performance in Kano demonstrated that Kwankwasia can mobilize northern votes through a non-ACP, non-emirate aligned pathway. Those three fractures are the structural vulnerabilities the Hausa movement is targeting. Why 2026 is different from previous Hausa assertion moments? The answer, yes, in three specific ways. First, Kwankwasia exists as a functioning mass organization with proven electoral delivery capacity. Second, the security crisis has given the Hausa-Fulani tension a daily material reality that abstract political assertions did not have in previous cycles. Third, the 2027 electoral stakes, an open northern presidential slot in a competitive national race, give the movement a specific near-term objective that previous iterations lacked. Whether those three differences are sufficient to overcome the historical pattern of movement fragmentation under patronage pressure is the question that will be answered by 2027. 3 signals to watch in the next 90 days. First, whether Kwankwaso makes a formal 2027 presidential declaration and on which platform. A declaration on a major party platform signals that the Hausa movement is seeking power through the system. A declaration on the NNPP signals that it is willing to operate outside the system and accept the electoral ceiling that entails. Second, Tinubu's next round of federal appointments. The ethnic composition of the next cabinet reshuffle, specifically whether Hausa representation increases at the expense of Fulani representation, will signal whether the presidency has assessed the Hausa movement as a threat requiring accommodation. Third, the Sultan of Sokoto's public statements on northern unity. If the Sultan speaks explicitly about the danger of intra-northern division in the coming months, the Fulani establishment has assessed the Hausa movement as serious enough to require its most powerful institutional voice. That statement, if it comes, will be the clearest single confirmation that what we are analyzing today is not noise, it is signal. Best case and worst case. Best case. The Hausa movement's political assertion forces a genuine renegotiation of northern political power sharing that produces more equitable Hausa representation in federal structures, reduces the political salience of the Hausa-Fulani split before it triggers ethnic conflict, and delivers a 2027 northern coalition that is broader and more democratically legitimate than the emirate-managed coalitions of previous cycles. Worst case. The movement escalates ethnic polarization in the northwest beyond the point that political management can contain, intersects with the existing security crisis in ways that produce communal violence between Hausa farming communities and Fulani herder groups, fractures the northern presidential coalition so severely that no northern candidate can reach the constitutional threshold in 2027, and produces a constitutional crisis that Nigeria's democratic institutions are not currently equipped to resolve. Probability assessment. Neither the best case nor worst case is certain. What is certain is that the Hausa movement's emergence as an explicit political force with organizational infrastructure, a specific electoral grievance, and a 2027 timeline is the most significant development in northern Nigerian political architecture since the APC's 2015 merger. It deserves more analytical attention than it is currently receiving. We opened with a question that most Nigerian political commentary has not yet asked with sufficient seriousness. What happens to everything when the North fractures? The answer is everything changes. Every coalition formula for 2027 is built on the assumption of northern political unity under a Hausa Fulani label that has papered over a genuine internal power hierarchy. That assumption is now being publicly challenged by a movement with organizational infrastructure, historical grievance, and a specific electoral calendar to work against. Whether that movement succeeds in its declared objective of Hausa political control of northern structures depends on one variable above all others: whether the Kwankwasia movement and the broader Hausa political assertion can maintain organizational discipline under the specific patronage pressures that the 2027 primary season will generate. That is the test that previous movements failed. It is the test that this one must pass if it is to be more than another entry in the long history of northern political assertions that went quiet after the federal appointment came through. Nigeria has survived 65 years of independence by managing the tensions between its ethnic blocs without allowing any single tension to become an unmanaged rupture. The Hausa Fulani question is now the most live tension in the system. Managing it wisely by all parties, including the federal government, the Fulani establishment, and the Hausa movement itself, is not simply a political challenge, it is a national one.